Locked away forever. Immigrant anarchists and federal sentences. If you love real American true crime stories that reveal hidden history, you're in the right place. This channel uncovers the darkest truths the system tried to erase. Subscribe now to join a growing community that exposes real stories, real prisons, and real injustice. Don't just watch history, understand it. The cell door slammed shut with a sound so loud it echoed through the stone hallway. The man inside did not shout. He did not beg. He simply stood there, staring at the iron bars, knowing something terrible had just happened. He had not been caught with a weapon. He had not been caught planning an attack. His crime was something far more dangerous in the eyes of the government. He believed the system was broken. Outside the prison walls, crowds were screaming his name. Newspapers were already calling him a monster. Politicians were calling him a threat to the nation. Inside the cell, the guards whispered a new kind of sentence. Not just prison, not just punishment. This was meant to be forever. And as the heavy footsteps of the guards faded away, one question hung in the air like smoke. How did believing in an idea become enough to lock a man away for life? It started years earlier, long before the cell door slammed. In the 1880s, America was changing fast. Cities were growing. Factories were loud and crowded. Immigrants arrived every day, hoping for work and a better life. Many came from Europe, carrying strong ideas about fairness, labor, and power. Some believed workers should not live in poverty, while factory owners grew rich. These ideas were called anarchism, and to many Americans, the word itself sounded like danger. Most anarchists never hurt anyone. They spoke at meetings, they wrote papers, they protested long hours and unsafe work. But fear does not care about facts. Fear only looks for someone to blame. That fear exploded in 1886 in Chicago. A labor rally filled Haymarket Square. It was loud but peaceful. Then, in a moment that would change history, a bomb was thrown. Panic followed. Police rushed in. Shots were fired. When it was over, people were dead. America was terrified. The bomb thrower was never clearly identified, but the arrests came fast. The men taken were almost all immigrants, Germans, Eastern Europeans, workers, writers, speakers. They were anarchists, yes, but many were not even at the scene when the bomb exploded. That did not matter. The nation wanted answers. The government wanted control. The trials were fast and angry. Evidence was thin. Fear was thick. Newspapers called for blood. Juries listened while prosecutors warned that these men were not just criminals, but ideas made flesh, dangerous ideas. When the verdicts came down, some were sentenced to death. Others were sentenced to long prison terms. Inside their cells, the message was clear. This was not just about a bomb. This was about stopping a belief. For the first time in American history, men were being locked away not for what they had proven to do, but for what they believed might happen if their ideas spread. Inside federal prisons and state penitentiaries, anarchist inmates were watched closely. Letters were read. Visits were limited. Silence was enforced. Guards were told these prisoners were different. They were not thieves or killers. They were something worse. They were threats to the nation itself. Some prisoners broke under the pressure. Some grew quiet. Some wrote letters that would never be sent. Outside the walls, immigrant communities felt the chill. Speaking too loudly, meeting too openly, believing too strongly could land you behind bars. The prison became a warning sign. If you were an immigrant, if you challenged power, if you believed the system should fall, you could be locked away forever.
As years passed, the fear did not fade, it grew. The idea that belief itself could be dangerous settled deep into American law and culture. Prisons were no longer just for crimes, they were becoming places to bury ideas. And inside one dark cell, as the light dimmed and night fell, an imprisoned anarchist realized something chilling. His sentence was not meant to end, it was meant to make him disappear. What the government did next would change prisons, laws, and freedom itself. And the worst part was still coming. The prison rules changed the moment the anarchists arrived. Guards were warned before the men even stepped inside. These were not ordinary prisoners. They were told these inmates could influence others with words alone. A single sentence spoken at the wrong time, a letter smuggled out, a shared idea whispered through bars could spread like fire. So the orders were clear: silence them, separate them, watch them always. Cells were placed far apart, conversations were punished, books were removed or censored, letters to family were delayed or never delivered. Some inmates were allowed only one short visit a year, others were not allowed any at all. The goal was not just control, it was isolation. Inside those stone walls, days blurred together. The men worked long hours, often doing hard labor meant to drain the body and quiet the mind. Breaking rocks, cleaning yards, carrying loads until hands bled and backs burned. At night, the silence felt louder than shouting. Some inmates tried to resist in small ways, a look held too long, a note scratched into a wall, a quiet hum of a song from home. Guards answered with punishment, solitary confinement, reduced meals, darkness that lasted days or weeks. Outside the prisons, the country was watching. Newspapers printed frightening headlines. Politicians gave speeches warning that anarchists were hiding everywhere. Laws were proposed to stop dangerous ideas. Immigration officers began turning people away based on beliefs, not crimes. America was learning to fear thoughts. One of the most powerful moments came years after Haymarket, when President William McKinley was assassinated in 1901 by an anarchist sympathizer. Though this happened just after the 1800s ended, its impact reached back into every prison cell holding an immigrant anarchist. Fear exploded again. Officials claimed the assassination proved what they had always said: ideas kill, belief is a weapon, and prisons, they argued, were the only defense. Anarchist inmates already behind bars felt the pressure tighten overnight. Sentences were reviewed but never reduced. Parole requests were denied without explanation. Guards became harsher, surveillance increased. Prisoners were told directly, "You will not leave here." For many, hope disappeared. Some inmates aged quickly, their hair turning gray behind bars. Others grew sick and weak. Medical care was minimal. A few died in custody, their names barely mentioned outside the prison records. Their families were often told weeks or months later. To the government, the system was working. No protests, no speeches, no movements spreading from prison walls. But something else was happening quietly. Prisons were becoming schools of resentment. Not because inmates were organizing, but because the punishment felt endless and unfair. Even prisoners who were not anarchists saw what belief-based punishment looked like. They saw men locked away without proof of violence. They saw sentences meant to erase a person, not correct behavior. Whispers spread anyway, not of rebellion, but of injustice. Lawyers began questioning the trials. Journalists started looking closer at the evidence used to convict anarchists. Some judges privately admitted the sentences had gone too far, but admitting fear-driven punishment would mean the system was wrong, and the system never liked being wrong. Inside one prison, an aging anarchist prisoner received a rare visitor, a reporter. The meeting was short and heavily watched, but before the guard could stop him, the prisoner spoke one sentence that would later appear in print. He said, "They did not lock me up for what I did. They locked me up for what they were afraid I might think." That sentence spread. Public opinion did not flip overnight, but cracks appeared. Americans began asking hard questions. Should belief be punished? Should prisons decide which ideas were acceptable? Could fear alone justify a life sentence? The government responded the only way it knew, by tightening control. New laws made it easier to deport immigrants with radical views. Prison terms for political crimes grew longer. Federal power expanded. The line between safety and silence blurred until it was almost impossible to see. Inside the cells, the men waited.
Some prayed, some wrote in secret. Some simply counted days they knew would never be marked as freedom. One prisoner, once a loud speaker at rallies, stopped speaking entirely. Another refused food for days, not as protest, but because he no longer cared. Guards noted these changes without emotion. Broken spirits were considered success. Then something unexpected happened. A document surfaced. Hidden in old court files, a legal mistake was discovered in one of the anarchist convictions. It was small, a procedural error, something most people would miss. But to the right eyes, it meant one prisoner's sentence might not be legal. Word reached the prison quietly. For the first time in years, guards looked nervous, because if one case fell apart, others could follow. And if the public learned that men had been locked away forever based on fear instead of facts, the entire system could be exposed. Inside his cell, the prisoner was told nothing official, but he noticed changes. Guards whispered more. Doors stayed locked longer. Visits were canceled without reason. Something was happening. And whether it meant freedom or a deeper kind of punishment, one truth was clear. The system was about to defend itself, no matter the cost. The decision was made behind closed doors. No announcement, no public notice, no warning to the prisoners whose lives were about to be affected. In quiet offices filled with papers and sealed files, officials agreed on one thing. If the public learned how weak some of these cases were, trust in the justice system could collapse, and that could not be allowed to happen. So the system moved first. The prisoner whose case contained the legal mistake was transferred overnight. No explanation was given. One evening he was in his cell. The next morning, the cell was empty. Other inmates noticed. Guards refused to answer questions. Silence returned, heavier than before. But the damage was already done. Word of the mistake reached a small group of lawyers and journalists. They began digging. Old trial records, missing evidence, witnesses who had changed their stories, judges who had given instructions that favored fear over facts. The deeper they went, the clearer it became. These men were not locked away because they were proven violent. They were locked away because the nation had panicked. One newspaper finally published the truth. It did not shout, it did not accuse, it simply asked a question. How many men are in prison for what they believed, not for what they did? The public reaction was slow but powerful. Some readers were angry, others were confused. Many felt uneasy. Americans had always believed prisons were for criminals. Now they were being told prisons had also been used to bury ideas. Government officials responded quickly. They said the prisoners were dangerous. They warned that releasing them would invite chaos.
They reminded the public of bombings, assassinations, and fear. Fear worked before, and they hoped it would work again. But something had changed. Families of imprisoned anarchists began speaking out. Mothers, wives, children who had grown up without fathers. They talked about visits through bars, about letters that never arrived, about birthdays missed and lives frozen in time. One woman told a reporter, "My husband has been in prison longer than he was free. Our son does not know his voice." Pressure grew. A small number of cases were reviewed, not overturned, just reviewed. For some prisoners, sentences were shortened slightly. For others, nothing changed at all. The system gave just enough to quiet the noise, but not enough to admit guilt. Most immigrant anarchists remained behind bars. Years passed, the men aged, the world outside changed. New fears replaced old ones, new enemies were named. But the lesson learned by the government stayed alive. Belief could be dangerous, fear could justify punishment, prison could be permanent. These early cases quietly shaped the future. During wartime, during political unrest, during moments of national panic, the idea returned again and again. Lock them away before they act, silence them before they speak. The anarchists of the 1800s became a blueprint. Some prisoners were eventually released, broken and old, into a world that no longer recognized them. Others died inside, buried in prison cemeteries with simple markers or none at all. Their names faded, but the system that trapped them grew stronger. History books rarely mention them. They focus on bombs, on assassinations, on fear. They do not dwell on the men who spent decades staring at walls for ideas they once believed would change the world. But their story matters, because it was the first time America decided that freedom of thought had limits, and those limits could be enforced with iron doors and life sentences. Today, the prisons look different. The language has changed. The enemies have new names, but the question remains the same. When fear takes control, who decides which ideas are too dangerous to exist? The cell doors may no longer echo through stone hallways the same way, but the lesson learned in those early federal prisons still whispers through history. And once a nation learns how to lock away belief, it never fully forgets how. The men who built the system never called it a mistake. They called it protection. Years after the last anarchist from the 1800s was either released or buried, government officials spoke about those cases in quiet, careful words. They said the nation had been young. They said the threats had felt new. They said fear had forced hard choices. But they never said sorry. Inside government files, the records remained. Names, sentences, notes written in tight handwriting. Radical, foreign, unreformed. These words followed the prisoners long after their voices were gone.
And those words did not stay in the past. As the new century moved forward, America faced new fears. War, spies, enemies within. Each time fear rose, officials looked back at what had worked before. They remembered how quickly prisons had silenced anarchists, how easily the public had accepted it, how little proof had been required. The pattern returned. People were arrested for meetings, for writings, for beliefs that made those in power uncomfortable. The prisons filled again, not just with criminals, but with ideas that scared the nation. What began with immigrant anarchists became something larger. Prison was no longer just a place for punishment. It was a tool, a warning, a message sent without words. Step too far outside what is allowed, and this is where you end up. The descendants of those early prisoners would never know the full story. Many families changed their names. Others stopped talking about the past. Shame and fear were passed down quietly, like an illness no one wanted to name. Some grandchildren only learned the truth decades later through old letters or forgotten court papers. They discovered that their grandfather had not been a violent man. He had been a speaker, a writer, a worker who believed the world could be fairer. And for that, he had been locked away. Historians now agree on one thing. The imprisonment of immigrant anarchists in the late 1800s was not just about crime. It was about control. It was about teaching the nation what would happen if certain ideas were allowed to grow. But history is not just about what happened. It is about what continues. Today, prisons are larger, laws are more complex, the language is more polished, but the question that haunted those iron cells still exists. Can belief be treated as a crime? Can fear justify forever? The men who were locked away at the dawn of federal power never got to answer those questions. Their lives ended behind walls built to outlast them. Yet their shadow remains. Every time a nation chooses safety over freedom without asking who decides the danger, it steps closer to repeating the same story. Locked away forever did not start as a sentence. It became a system. And once a system learns how to erase people quietly, it does not need chains to do it again. All it needs is fear and someone willing to turn the key. The door did not slam this time. It closed quietly. That was the most frightening part. In the early 1900s, a new prisoner sat alone in a federal cell, staring at walls built decades earlier for immigrant anarchists. He was not part of the Haymarket era. He had never thrown a bomb. He had never hurt anyone. But the reason he was there felt painfully familiar. He had spoken too boldly. He had believed too strongly. And the system already knew what to do with men like him. By then, the method was perfected. No crowds, no loud trials, no public outrage. Just paperwork, sealed files, and long sentences that quietly erased people from society. The immigrant anarchists of the 1800s were gone, but their fate had become a blueprint. Government agencies studied those old cases and learned something important. You did not need clear proof of violence to lock someone away. You only needed fear, careful language, and laws written just wide enough to catch the dangerous. Words like radical, extremist, threat to stability replaced the older labels. They sounded cleaner, smarter, safer. Prison kept growing. New groups were targeted in different eras: labor organizers, political activists, protest leaders. Each time the justification sounded reasonable. Each time the public was told it was necessary. And each time the lesson from the anarchists returned: act before they do.
Inside prisons, the punishment looked modern, but the goal was the same: isolation, surveillance, silence. Inmates learned quickly that speaking too much could cost them privileges, visits, or hope of release. Some guards didn't even know the full stories of the prisoners they watched. They were told only one thing: these people are dangerous. That sentence was enough. Historians now say the most powerful weapon created during the anarchist imprisonments was not the prison itself. It was the idea that freedom could be suspended without proof as long as fear was strong enough. The men locked away in the 1800s never saw how far their story would reach. They never saw how their silence would echo. Today, their names are buried in archives, but their treatment lives on in policy, in law, in the quiet decisions made during moments of national panic. Most people will never visit those old cells. They will never read the letters written in fading ink. They will never hear the voices that were cut short by iron doors. But the question those prisoners left behind still stands. If belief can be punished once, it can be punished again. If fear can justify prison once, it can justify it forever. The system does not need villains to survive. It only needs uncertainty. And somewhere in a quiet cell, another door closes without a sound. not because a crime was proven, but because an idea was feared. And that is how being locked away forever truly began, not with violence, but with silence. The prison records end quietly. No drama, no final speeches, just short lines written in ink. Died in custody, released due to illness, sentence completed. For the immigrant anarchists locked away in the late 1800s, there was no moment when the nation stopped and looked back. There was no public apology. There was no clear ending. The story simply faded from headlines and slipped into history. But the impact never faded. Years later, when new fears rose, lawmakers did not start from nothing. They already had a model, a tested method. They knew how to use prisons to calm panic. They knew how to frame belief as danger, and they knew the public would accept it if they were afraid enough. The men from the past became ghosts inside the system. Their suffering taught the government how far it could go without being stopped. Inside old prison buildings, some cells remained unchanged for decades. Thick doors, narrow windows, walls that seemed to press inward. Guards joked that these cells were idea-proof. Nothing could grow in them, nothing could escape. But ideas do not die easily. Long after the prisoners were gone, their words survived in scraps of letters, court transcripts, and memories passed down by families who were too afraid to speak for years. Historians later pieced together the truth. These men were not angels, but they were not monsters either. They were punished beyond reason. They were made examples, and that was the point. By locking them away forever, the system sent a message to everyone else. Do not challenge power too loudly. Do not believe too freely. Do not forget who decides what is dangerous. For a long time, that message worked. People stayed quiet, movements slowed, fear did its job. But history has a way of circling back. Each new generation asks the same questions. Who decides what a threat is? Where does safety end and control begin? The answers are never simple, but they always matter. The immigrant anarchists of the 1800s did not live to see these questions asked again. Most of them died believing the world had forgotten them, and in many ways it had. Yet their story still shapes the present. Every law written during a moment of panic, every arrest made without clear proof, every prison sentence meant to silence rather than protect. All of it traces back to those early cells. Locked away forever was never just about them. It was about teaching a nation that fear could be stronger than freedom. The doors that closed on those men did more than trap bodies. They changed how power worked, quietly, permanently. And that is why their story still matters. Because once a country learns to lock people away for what they believe, the line is crossed, and crossing it back is never easy. The prisons may look different now. The language may sound softer. The reasons may feel new. But the foundation was built long ago by immigrant men whose greatest crime was believing the world could be different. Their names may be forgotten, but the system they helped create is not. And as long as fear can turn belief into a prison sentence, the story of being locked away forever is never truly over. If this story moved you, there are many more the world never tells. Subscribe and become part of a community that uncovers real crime, real history, and real truth. Like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because some stories were buried for a reason, and we bring them back.